You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Also, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to. Give it a 5-star review as well. It costs absolutely nothing, but helps keep all of this for free. If you want more, join the Insiders program in the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel, so give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is available to you. So, Jake, we're going to talk about the Ole Miss offense, and you mentioned Trinidad Chambliss before the break. You know, he is the first quarterback in Ole Miss history since Eli Manning to throw for over 250 yards in his first 4 starts. And everybody's like, well, yeah, that's a pretty good number. But then you think about the quarterbacks that they've had, and Jackson Dart, Matt Corral, and Jordan Ta'amu back in the days, Chad Kelly, Bo Wallace. Remember Dr. Bo playing for Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss? Mm-hmm. Throwing for over 250 yards in 4 starts, it felt like that would have happened. But Trinidad has just been on this ascendancy plane and getting these national stories and all of that. Listen, if Ole Miss beats Georgia in Sanford Stadium with the fact that they've only lost to Alabama in that building this decade, Trinidad might be in the top 2 or 3 to win the Heisman Trophy.
I mean, look, at this point, if that were to happen, yes. I think the thing that has impressed me the most about Trinidad, and if you look at his past and kind of the way that he played, he obviously made a big jump in competition. And typically when you see that doesn't mean he's not as athletic, but you kind of have to rely on some other things to have the same amount of success. You can't get away with the same things you used to get away with. And a lot of times that leads to turnovers. Well, he's thrown 1 interception all year. I mean, his completion percentage is over 65, which isn't bad at all. You're averaging almost, 10 yards a pass. You've got 7 touchdowns and 1 interception, and you weren't the guy really that had the whole offseason to be the guy. So I think it's not only a testament to him, but it's just Lane Kiffin's ability to not only schematically put a guy in a position, right? A lot of guys know scheme, they know what to call, but a lot of it is feel and how to handle the different mentalities of quarterbacks because they are different. And Austin is different than what Trinidad is. So Lane's just ability to be malleable and to mold these guys into what seems like a finished product very quickly when it's, a next man up mentality. It's very, very impressive. And yes, if he goes on the road and he lights up Georgia and has a big Heisman moment in that game that puts them ahead and they win it, we do need to start mentioning the word Heisman. That's going to be really tough to do, but that's why you level up. That's why you come to a place like Ole Miss from where he was, so you can play in these games and play in these moments. And I'll say this, I know it wasn't sexy against Washington State, but Trinidad's got a lot of dog in them, And you're born with that, right? That's a gift from God, and he has it. And I don't think the lights are going to be too big for him. He's going to want to go out there and make plays. So it's just hats off to everybody for getting him ready, and hats off to him for staying and then being ready when his number was called.
All right. So my favorite part of having you on the show is when we get in the weeds just a little bit. I enjoy getting to the weeds. Last year when Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart and everybody was able to beat Georgia, everybody's like, hey, the defense handled that. But schematically, offensively, Lane Kiffin found something in the Georgia linebackers that meant they could take advantage of those positions in the passing game. They used Caleb Lee running Texas routes and things like that out of the backfield to make some big plays. That big drive that Austin Simmons had against the Georgia Bulldogs, there was a lot of that going on. And I think with Daquan Wright, who I believe is the best player on Ole Miss's offensive team, Daquan Wright, him and Caden Lee and Winston Watkins and those guys in the pass game, if you can get around those tall trees on the defensive line, because Trinidad isn't the tallest player, I think you can make a little hay in the pass game, not to mention the jump balls on the outside. Ole Miss did that against LSU, just like Tennessee did that against Georgia. So that should be available and keep the cornerbacks from pressing up. I think the point in this game, in the passing game, is to keep Kirby you know this, you have a background of following his time at Alabama, from that boa constrictor coming down to where the safety started at 12 yards, they end up at 8 yards. And there's just not any space for you to operate with. I think the goal is to avoid that. So you have to take your deep shots, but you earn the right to take advantage of their linebackers in the pass game if possible.
Without a doubt. Look, play calling, you have your stuff that you like, but a lot of it is matchup dictated, right? That's what you're looking at. I mean, it's just like basketball, right? You're trying to find the best matchups. A lot of times you're calling plays to matchups, not just calling plays because you think schematically this play blends well with what they're giving you schematically on defense. So when you look at Lane Kiffin, the two things I think he is the best at, and the best offensive coordinators are, is one, calling plays early in the game to set up for a counter off of it later in the game, showing you something early, showing you the same thing later, but giving you a different result. The second thing is in-game adjustments. I mean, how many times, Steven, and I think the audience will vibe with me on this, do we watch a team come out and on their first drive, they're on script, they look amazing, but then the adjustments start to happen, and it's like the water's cut off. Look at Missouri, Alabama last week. Missouri came out on that first drive and looked like the Kansas City Chiefs versus Alabama. All of a sudden, Alabama adjusts. Missouri struggles to move the ball consistently throughout the rest of that game. Lane is so good at actually playing the game in game, because your game plan, it never always goes to plan. And typically your game plan is not going to work throughout the whole game, or they'd script the whole game. That's just not how it works. So Lane's ability to adjust and say, hey, we thought Georgia was going to give us this. Now they're giving us this. We're going to give them that. That is where he really, really makes his money. And that's where the best play callers make their money. So you never feel like you're out of a game from a play calling standpoint when you're able to evolve as the other side of the ball evolves. Now, you bring up a good point about the batted balls, right, with Trinidad Chambliss. And there's a couple things that you can do to mitigate that. But then sometimes when you do one thing, it opens you up to another. For example, Trinidad Chambliss may have to drop a little bit deeper than some other quarterbacks. And look, you always throw through windows, but everybody's not Drew Brees, right? Everybody can't do what he does. Sometimes you drop back a little bit deeper to give you an extra half second to be able to get that ball up and over and where you need to go. But when you do that and you have a deeper dropping spot, especially on third and passing, it helps out the defensive ends because now your tackle has to drop deeper, and that soft outside shoulder is really a problem with guys that can lean into you. Now, Georgia doesn't have that elite pass rusher this year. They don't, but it still puts that tackle in a bad spot. What I think you're going to see to mitigate those batted balls is not as much over the middle, not as many angles or Texas routes, whatever you want to call it. I think you're going to get a lot of quick game outside, so he can get it and spit it, especially if the run game isn't working, because that's really a long handoff is what you're doing. Bubble screens, now screens, stack screens, things like that. I mean, hitches, right? Even slants that you can get outside if they're early enough, or if you get double slant, throwing the slant to number 2. So therefore you're not throwing it really in that B gap or right over that guard when that first slant guy comes across. So I'll be interested to see how they mitigate that as well. But it is a really, really good point.
Yeah, I think that this is also a jet sweep game.
Well, yeah, you're going to get that motion regardless. I mean,
yeah.
And another thing is, like, you're going to get a lot of side to side, right? Because that moves eyes, that slows down. But it's also telling you what coverage they're in. Most offensive coordinators, yes, they motion to out formation you. They hope that works out, but they're going to motion to see how you react to the motion, especially, Steven, with matchups. Let's say their best DB is going to shadow your best wide receiver. Well, I know 90% of the time, if I motion my guy from one side to the other, if that same guy on defense follows him over there, I'm probably getting man coverage. So it's not just a tool to out formation you or to get in a certain formation. It's to identify coverage to give some answers to the quarterback. So you're going to get jet sweep. You're going to get power read off jet sweep. You're going to get split zone. You're going to get split zone bluff off of it, which Auburn had success against Georgia. Of course, Jackson Arnold couldn't complete it to Preston Howard on that 4th and 1 when it was wide open. But Jackson Arnold's about as soft as pudding in the brain when it comes down to making big time plays.
He's Steve Saxing right now. He's got the yips, like literally.
No, he's scared, bro. He's scared to death. That man is scared to death. See, Trinidad's not scared. Trinidad may be little, but he may not have been a 5-star coming out of high school, but he was born with it. Jackson Arnold just horrified. This man has been horrified, except on TikTok with his girlfriend when they're eating Sonic burgers or whatever. Outside of that, the man can't do it. But back to Ole Miss, you're going to get a lot of movement pre-snap to identify coverage and also to get in certain formations to those matchups. There's a reason why you start out in doubles and you motion the guy to make it trips, and that solo side is where you want to go. That's why the best receiver you got is typically the one in 3-by-1 that's on the one side, because that safety that's typically on the one-man side most of the time has to cross key number 3 on the line of scrimmage, on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage, and then it's that solo matchup one-on-one.
Should be pretty good. All right, when we come back, we will wrap it up with Jake Crain from Crain and Company and talk about how this game is going to end up. He's going to break out his crystal ball as well, so we'll see how that goes. But before that, all right, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. If you don't believe me, Google Ole Miss podcast and see how much of this show comes up. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's panel of local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll talk to you later.